Hello, everyone. Again, another episode with an amazing guest. Today we have Sam Smith. He's a former soldier and very much engaged, let us say, in all markets. He wanted to make a change and make a point. So, Sam, thank you very much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How about yourself?
All good, all good. I'm always like in a good vibe, as I always say to everyone. So, Sam, for the ones who actually don't know you, how would you characterize yourself for the ones that are just watching or that will watching this episode?
I've had a pretty common history. Went to school, went to undergrad, went into the workforce, and in the workforce, I started off in finance and
Right.
kind of worked through my career at an entry level as a registered rep. Selling securities, and later got into analysis and then deal structuring, and further along got into investment banking and corporate finance, and learned a lot about the markets domestically and started to explore globally. Got a lot of industry experience in oil and gas, real estate, manufacturing, and I guess it's more of a vice than an investment, but it's the entertainment industry. I'm all about sports teams. But I've had a pretty common path, and I've got to do
Sure.
a lot of exciting things. But otherwise, there isn't anything extraordinary about my history. I have a good chunk of experience in that history.
Amazing, amazing. I'm pretty sure you did. You actually 50-year-old, and we actually same age, so half a century of experience, as we can say.
That's right.
So during this stage and all the experience you got it from markets and the approach, what was the challenges and the changes that you saw that should be changed to make it easier and make it affordable and understanding for everyone?
Well, it really goes back about 30 years when I had my very first job in the industry, and I passed my series exam, so I was a registered rep, and I could actually deal in securities. I was a broker, and we were dealing with more venture style projects at that point. It was movie syndications, real estate syndicates, oil and gas drilling programs, more limited partner type stuff. And because of that, here in the States, we have a standard called the Accredited Investor Standard.
Right?
And it basically means there's a simple qualification, and it's essentially you have to be a millionaire. And I didn't grow up around millionaires. I was introduced to that later on, and our minimum investment at that time was $110,000. And for me, I'm like, well, who has $110,000? I mean, I didn't know anybody with that kind of money.
30
So
years ago. You're
yeah,
going to
yes, 30 years
understand that
ago,
30
yes.
years ago, $100,000, it would be like 10 or 20 million today. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was astronomical to me. But one of the things that jumped out immediately was I wanted to sell to people I know because I was a young broker. So I'm looking for that comfortable way to have a conversation, not really sure how to cultivate relationships or be able to
Sure.
introduce the idea of, hey, Julio, I need you to write me a check for $110,000. So one of the first things that I picked up on was, well, why why does somebody have to be worth a certain amount to decide how they want to spend their money? Because if I had a gent who, he was only worth $100,000 and said, "Hey Sam, I'd like to invest $5,000," I don't think that's unreasonable. Those are his earnings. That's up to him how he wants to deploy that.
Of course.
So one of the first things that jumped out at me was, well, wait a second, we've got a couple categories here of opportunity, and that doesn't seem right. Now, I'm all for regulation. I'm all for protecting people. At the same time, I think natural rights exist, and the fruits of your labor should be deployed as you see fit. So, yeah, going back 30 years ago, that was the first thing that kind of triggered me that, this isn't quite right. But as just a member of the market and the system and subject to those rules, that's all I knew at the time.
Sure.
So,
Sure. And among what you detected, you starting to build up a company on this focus and on that direction. Tell us a bit about that.
yeah, so I, uh, I'm a bit of a market purist. I think you let the market make its decisions, and the market is made up of a collective of opinions
Right.
and actions and activities and ideas. And the best result comes when everybody can participate, and not when there are only a few heads that say, we think the market wants this, and then ignores the other ideas. I think a pure
Yeah.
market is better. So I think access to a market is very important. Um, when you think about the project that we're putting together, we wanted to create that access or that equality of opportunity, not outcome, because when you play in the market, you take a risk. You may win, you may lose, but it should be at your option if you want to participate in that market. So what we've started to do is open access.
Right.
And open access means we're in a kind of an archaic system, and it's only been deemed archaic here in the last 7 or 8 years because of the blockchain technology. That if you wanted to invest in a particular country, then uh, you had to have an established permission to transact in that country. So for overseas people who want to transact in the U.S., there are certain metrics and qualifications and
Right.
regulations they have to meet. But with the creation of the blockchain and the ability to transact globally in a moment's time, that raised the question, well, why shouldn't anybody with an internet connection or a smartphone be able to participate in a market? So we've started to tie all the markets together. We do have relationships with all the U.S. markets. We have relationships with several overseas markets,
Sure.
and we're creating a platform where you might be able to trade your Ford Motor Company stock for a share of Saudi Aramco stock. So breaking the jurisdictional boundaries, borderless access, and
Right.
access for everyone who wants to participate is kind of the cornerstone of what we're working on.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And I mean, obviously, you had a lot of challenges because you're transforming the market with your own services and your own platform. Can you tell us what was more challenging for you in doing this?
Oh yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, um, as I mentioned, uh, I come from real estate, manufacturing, oil and gas, and here's what I can tell you: is everybody who sits on our team knows how to develop a piece of property and build a house. Just as just about everyone on our team knows how to drill an oil well or
Right.
rework a property. Manufacturing, we go through process, we go through cost, we go through labor. These things are all, I won't say they're easy, but they've all been learned, so we've done them before.
Yeah.
This project was unique in a couple ways because what we're doing, it may appear that we're another entrant in the market, but we're not. We're actually unique. There are others who have uh, similar capabilities, but they aren't doing it quite like we are. What really was a challenge for us was coming from those traditional industries and having a background in corporate finance
Right.
was keeping up with the pace of one, financial markets, because they move fast and we're kind of in tune with that. But then technology, this technology and its developments and its movement forward is going really fast. So we combined finance and tech. So we've got a fintech.
Yeah.
Not only is it a fintech, but what you're seeing are the jurisdictional authorities around the globe who, forgive me, but they're dinosaurs and they aren't really up to speed.
Yeah.
And they are just changing rules left and right, adding this and expecting that. And I mean, they can't keep up. So the
Just
big
sorry for
challenge today,
interrupt. I mean, regarding that, I think authorities should be more learning and update themselves according to the technology and as it goes on the market. Because I think most of the laws that actually exist, they are not even compatible with actually technology sometimes, and nothing to do with it at all. So I mean, it's something that I think has to be more transparent and understandable because I mean, blockchain when it came out, there were no regulations. Now the regulations are being thrown off, which is something that should be parallel. And
Mhm.
this is very engaging because they need to understand that once you develop a platform, which you did, You cannot redevelop the laws because it's technology. If you do something that is re-engaging what is done,
Hmm.
uh, then and it's already in public, it needs to be undone. And this is not like with the magic wand,
Hmm.
there you go. Oh, so let's undo that and put this process there.
Right.
So you physically need to be sometimes dramatically changes technologically on the
Right.
platform. And this is, I think, it's the real status and reality of technology in that specific area of impact. And
Yeah.
it's been challenging in that point, I believe. I mean, it's something that they really need to understand. What is blockchain? What does it do? And all the companies that are producing their efforts and services in their platforms, they need to understand what those platforms do and then do the actual regulation accordingly.
They
And
the regulating bodies aren't even going to begin to be able to keep pace with this evolving technology because this isn't it's not a localized technology.
yeah,
This is it's kind of like capital or money. Well, what industry does money apply to? All of them. It is liquid, and we're kind of creating something here. One of the examples I've shared with folks is here in the states. Um, you can write a check at the local store for a bag of dog food,
okay,
and before you have that dog food put back in your shopping cart, that check has already cleared. Okay, but if you deposit a check like I did from an attorney's trust account, the bank can put a hold on it for 10 days or so. Like, well, wait a second.
amazing. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
they put a 10-day hold on it, and they're getting to borrow your money for 10 days, and they're not compensating you. But this is a perfect example of technology has moved fast enough to clear
Yeah,
that personal check.
yeah,
But legislation hasn't caught up to put the expectations on the banking community that look, we know you can
right.
clear the funds you need to clear, so they just get to borrow money at zero cost. So legislation just is not it's not going to be able to keep pace with this. And this was 20 years ago when I had that take place.
Yeah. It's something like I just said. I mean, it's something that you need to keep it going and understanding, how the things are shaping. So, tell us a bit about your strategies. I mean, what will be the outcome, your vision? How do you plan to take the next steps into the market for people who don't understand exactly what you do, to have a better engagement regarding your work and the solutions you do on the market?
Yeah. So first and foremost, it's borderless. And we kind of call this the plane. In other
Right.
words, if we're looking at the map of the globe, can we connect all the markets? Can we create access for everyone? And what's interesting about it is this model actually existed, decades ago, long before blockchain. Because
Right.
here in the U.S., we had the NYSE, and in the NYSE, you had an auction system. You had a central location where trading took place, and there was signaling and buying and selling, and they'd all have to gather there to execute these transactions on behalf of others. Well, the OTC markets was actually ahead of its time because it was a remote market. So it was made up of a series of broker dealers that did not have a central location, and they just traded by wire and communication.
Right.
And it's not the premier market, but if you stop and think about what they were doing, it's exactly what's taking place with blockchain and cryptocurrency. Whereas you don't have remote broker dealers, now you have remote individuals,
Yeah.
and individuals can participate and act on their own behalf. So if we look at that plane and we have individuals who can act on their own behalf, then they, as the people, can connect the globe. They can be the direct participants in the market. So beyond the plane, we're looking at layers as well, because the only thing that we've introduced to date, and we do have an inventory of products
Right.
and access points and other strategies. But aside from the plane, we've got levels. And when I say levels, what it means is on that plane and connecting the world through this borderless approach is access to asset classes. So accessing markets, you've got stocks, bonds, and whatever's registered or traded. But we're looking now also at, for example, a direct participation program.
Right.
So we may have oil wells. And those oil wells are also tokenized and available on chain. And if we've got this borderless approach, then we may have someone who's sitting in Singapore and says, you know what, I'd like to own a piece of that West Texas oil well. And they own a piece of that oil well. They've got the tokenized representation of their ownership, but they've also got the pass through of the rewards from the production of that oil well. And when that buyer decides, I've done well with this, but I want to go more to equities, and they could then turn around and swap that out for a share of Saudi Aramco
Right.
or something else. So if we go borderless and we introduce the asset classes, all of a sudden we're beginning to tokenize,
Yeah.
all of the world and create trading and access points for everyone to participate in the market. Now that's from the personal side. On the corporate side, uh, one of the things that really jumps out at us is, be it a mature company or a young company, if it's introduced to the market, then the market's going to make a decision on whether or not that company is going to move forward. Because
Right.
if a company comes out, introduces their products, their wares, their strategy, the market's going to review it and make a decision. And it may be funded or it may not be. But what's important here is it isn't funneling through an investment bank or an insurance company or some higher up that says, well, we don't want these 5 or 6 deals because they compete with our other interests. So we're going to focus on this one. And this is the one that will be offered to the market. I think there are more voices to be heard. And
Yeah.
I think there are more interests than what is being represented in the market now. So just off the cuff and in general, it's kind of the strategy is connect the globe, introduce asset classes.
I think in the end, what you've done is a better approach of all interconnect the whole technology existent and make it more transparent for anyone to use it. And I think that was a great idea and it was a great goal actually, because I mean technologically it's not easy to do that, and you just interconnect all the dots to make everyone be visible, doesn't matter where you are. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So, what will be your next steps? Do you have updates for better approaches? How will you actually usually do, or what is your goal within, let's just say, within the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, 3 to 5 years, to tell you the truth, as fast as this moves, uh, I'm an economist, honestly. And what I can tell you is, with what's going on in the world right now, and as fast as
Yeah,
this technology moves, you're lucky you get a good 3 month forecast.
yeah,
It just consistently changes. But I know for us, we're looking at a couple things. Is we're going to connect additional markets, and we're going to introduce additional asset classes. And we have had a good number of venture capital firms start reaching out to us because I think they understand the value of what we're doing more than uh, just an investment in a company. But we'll expand the market reach. We'll introduce the additional asset classes. And one of the things that is on the horizon, this is a unique aspect of what we're doing, is the market itself is going to be tokenized.
right.
So we're going to tokenize the market itself, and we are actually going to have an offering. And the purpose of that offering, there will be a full UOP or use of proceeds that comes with it, but it's to expand the market to get further engagement. Less on the marketing side, more on the asset acquisition side. So we actually have everything in hand. But a unique aspect is actually when we tokenize the market, when we offer it, it's going to be the holders of those tokens that actually own the market.
Right.
So there will be fractional opportunities and such. That capitalization, gosh, like I said, a 3 month forecast is difficult, but I imagine we're probably going to be 2 to 3 months out before we introduce the first tranche. And about the time we do, we should have the full suite of products and services available.
Yeah.
Um, but gosh, I couldn't tell you about 3 to 5. I mean, I think we're going to be in a completely different world at that
No,
point.
I do agree with what you're saying, especially now with the upcoming of quantum computing, that dramatically will change everything. It doesn't matter how you see it, it will change. Especially from the security point of view, many things have to change. Right now, the world is very exposed to that, and I
Hmm.
think that's a side effect. Let's just say that has to have. a clear approach and a timeline on it, because
Sure.
otherwise everyone could be or should be exposed, and it's in the end it's something that people should have this information. I'm overwhelmed how come is not so well informed and not so many people know about this.
Oh yeah,
And yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say that's one of the things that was educational for me. Is I'm in tune with markets in general, and have experience and understand how they work. And you could say I was indoctrinated, like we all have been. I mean, we're all creatures of our environment, and we've all been shaped and
Yeah,
molded that there are certain ways that certain things work. And the market in particular, because it is so incredibly regulated, there really is one way to do it. You can get creative in the capital stack and the financing and how you arrange the structure and such, but there are some absolutes in there. And myself, included with the vast majority of the people that I interact with, we've been indoctrinated that this is how the market works.
yeah,
So when you come with this idea of, well, we're going to allow global trading, the first thought that comes to mind, well, which market is it? Well, no, it's not which market is it. We are the market. Well, how can you be the market? And they want to know, well, where are you going to file your Form 1? Well, Form 1 is an SEC filing. Okay, so it'd be a US based exchange. No, that's missing the point. It's because we've been so geared to think in terms of jurisdictions and boundaries and those sets of rules,
yeah,
when the reality is, in my opinion, there are natural rights. And going back to the gentleman earlier in the conversation who wanted to invest $5,000, but he wasn't qualified, he should have that right to do so. But he's only going to have that right to do so if a market exists under global rule, that allows him to actually participate. So I agree with what you were suggesting there, that it's people don't see it yet, and that's kind of our purpose here, is to introduce it.
it's just a metaphor. I always say that technology is going very, very fast. Um, Most of the things are not equivalent to the technology, because a person thinks, no, now it's done. No, it's done now, but it needs to keep updated, because technology moves advanced in uh, all fragments in all directions, and you
Hmm.
need to update yourself against theoretical threats, for example, and real serious approaches. I mean, I see actually quantum computing. There's a lot of opportunities in there, but there's also many dangers. Um,
Hmm.
Quantum computing, if it gets on the wrong hands, it can be used for ransomware. It can be used for many other tools, which will make it very, very hard to defrag and revert back against it. Let's just say. I think it should be controlled. I think whoever uses it has to have a specific reason, and it has to be regulated because of the dangers that can include.
Yeah.
For people to
Along.
understand, just a fragment of calculation in a matter of, what to say, in a small chain of quantum computing, you can physically crack AES 256 in less than 20 to 30 hours. This would
One of the
be,
things,
yeah,
wholly hear what you're saying, and I'm not an expert in quantum computing, but I understand exactly what you're saying.
yeah,
And it did trigger me to think one of the other aspects of our construct, because our development didn't come about overnight. This wasn't a 2 or 3 month project. It was actually about a 2 or 3 year project,
yeah,
as we figured out the regulation, the tech, and these pieces. But what you just mentioned about ransomware and such, one of the aspects to our market, or what we're doing, and one of the key points of difference versus a number of the larger, or even specifically regulated institutions you see beginning to participate in this space, is the fact that they have a central repository. And in our world, one of the things that we wanted to do was offer that access to these products. And we
right,
wanted just a bilateral transaction. So all of our all of our participants, everyone who connects their wallet to our market, they manage and custody their own assets. We don't custody on behalf of everyone. And what triggered me there is when you think about, quantum computing or ransomware or some of the hacks and such. If I were in that space, which I'm not, but if I were in that space, I'm going to hack one of those regulated big boys because it's one shot and it's a massive kill. Because when I get in there, I'm going to get access to all 3, 4, 10 million accounts versus an individual who may
Yeah,
be managing their $6,000. So
absolutely.
we think there's a lot of power in spreading that risk and mitigating that risk just by having it in the hands of so many, much like the foundational piece of the blockchain that
Yeah,
transactions are verified by multiples. Well, assets aren't clustered in one place, so you don't rob one bank. You're going to spend your entire life trying to get in the pockets of as many people as you can, but you're just not going to have the bandwidth to do it. So I
yeah.
think there's a significant safety measure in not custodying the assets.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I totally agree with you. There's a big differentiality, of course, it needs to be improved according to the upcoming years still, because I mean, it will be that's not significant, but have some effect. But I mean, if we compare the way, for example, banks work to the actual blockchain, people might not be aware that blockchain is much more safer and secure than the actual interaction between internet banking and bank transactions.
Yeah, it was about 2 years ago that I was introduced to that because I come from traditional banking and wires and ACH and checks and
Yeah.
certified funds and the old school. I'm familiar with it. And one of the best lessons I've had in this space was a couple years ago when one of our developers, he's over in the UK. US, UK. I mean, transactions are pretty simple, straightforward.
Yeah.
And I sent him a wire for, I think it was a wire for $5,000. It was a $5,000 wire. The bank lost that wire for a month. It was gone for a month. And I,
Amazing.
I was I was on the phone with the bank and dropping emails and check with their fraud department and everyone else. And I wasted a lot of time. It probably cost me $5,000 of my time just to chase this down before it was ultimately returned. Not only that, but it was damaging because, I'm talking to my developer. I'm like, look, yeah, my word, I sent the funds. I sent him all the evidence, sent him the transaction ID and everything else. And he's a good guy and he's one of our chieftains. But just the same, you know, a month was burned. Well, he said, well,
Amazing.
Sam, here's how you need to transact. And he introduced me to a couple other, crypto apps and such. And the transaction went through, it cost me $8, and it was done in about 13 seconds. I'm like,
Exactly. Yeah.
why isn't everybody doing it this way? I had the same thing in Africa.
Yeah.
I hired a developer there. I said, how do I get you paid? He said, crypto. So set up a wallet. I had him on the phone, executed the transaction. He was paid. This is so much more efficient than what we're doing right now. So much more efficient.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the difference between globalization and internationalization because banks are still international and crypto and blockchain are global. And
Right.
the transaction is immediate. I mean, you are connected to the same system, same network. You do, bam, that's it. With the transaction, you send it, as you just mentioned. Sometimes, of course, it takes shorter time, but I mean, when it's sent, you are depending on a bank, and you won't know when it arrives exactly to the other side.
Right.
In blockchain or crypto, you know exactly when it's received and when it's not.
Right. Right.
Right. Now I think that there's something there for banks to take a look at. Not only that, the way it authenticates is much safer. I mean, the
We
encryption in blockchain and crypto is much higher than in any bank at the moment.
we actually had conversation, and that's all it's been so far. Conversation about actually, setting up global banking. Specifically for this because I still go through the major brands because that's where I come from. but it doesn't make sense when the technology is available to execute transactions that much faster. I also think that translates
Yeah,
to,
I tell you one thing about that. I actually got in a project that is set up in Dubai, and unfortunately, is the only country that allows you to have a license as a crypto bank. So if you want to set up a bank that has crypto or it's going to be fundamentally in crypto and blockchain, in other countries, it's not efficient, it's not in effect. So you won't have the license from government to actually open it. And this is the real story. I mean, and it's dramatic because, I mean, seeing the effect that it went, we tried to shape the difference and differentiality in the market. And there's only one country in the world that actually gives officially that banking license. Like when you open a bank officially and gets all the regulations, all the licenses, like a normal bank, like Bank of America,
mhm.
etc. So all those procedures in any other country for a bank that wants to open its crypto or blockchain, it doesn't exist. So
Well,
I'm just walking you
no,
through
no.
because I went through all this already. So yeah,
Yeah, like I said, we had conversation on it, and sometimes when you've had a couple drinks and you get deeper in the conversation,
yeah, yeah,
we even argued with ourselves, like, well, are we kind of missing the point here? Because are we just replicating the same system with new technology? Because banking, if you've got a pure market where there's complete connectivity,
yeah,
if a business or somebody needs a loan, then why couldn't that loan scenario just be tokenized? Why would it have to go through a central authority? Why could it not just be in the form of a smart contract? So
yeah,
maybe there isn't a centralized global bank, it's just global banking
yeah,
among the people.
yeah, yeah.
That's what happens when you have too many drinks, right?
No, I mean that's what I call it brainstorming, and it's needed because in these is where you get all the ideas and the approaches, and sometimes even projects born like this. You know, I think it's constructive in some point. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of approaches and there's a lot of strategies should be in place, and especially not only to markets and banking, but also for assets. Asset management is a very critical part of any market,
Mm-hmm.
and he has very slow management um, as it is at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It cannot be moved at the same speed. There is not completely same regulation as we move other items. And I think it's an approach that has to be included. It's same like commodities. I mean, I think once we get an idea, what is the way forward? Because in the end, banks somehow are blocking most of the platforms, especially blockchain, crypto, because they're not working with it. But it doesn't mean that it's not better or is bad for the market. It's just that they are competition. So this is what people need to understand. They kind of have monopoly, but in some point they have to break because the management of blockchain is much easier and much safer than the actual procedure with a bank.
Yeah. Yeah. And in all honesty, it still comes down to the people because we could argue yay or nay that banks have a stranglehold on the markets and which companies or businesses are successful, who's approved, who's not approved. But they've got that power only because the people give them that power. But 10, 15 years ago, what was the alternative? There was no other option.
Yeah,
If you wanted to cash your check, you had to go to a bank.
yeah,
But that's why we're at the beginning of this evolution here, and this is an opportunity for people to actually begin to explore alternatives. Well, do I want to hire a financial advisor to manage my assets? And in some cases, it may be a great play. There may be others who just say, you know what, I read the journal every day, and I'm always picking these stocks. And as my fallback, I want these asset categories. And then they don't go through a broker because they're available in the global market. And it'll be interesting to see how power starts to dissipate because people have actually taken control of their own assets, their own destiny, their own strategies. So, point being that banks and markets have power because people give it to them.
You with the expertise and according to your knowledge, how do you think that the market's supposed to move forward? I mean, with all the complexity that exists, what is your opinion regarding the transparency and to make the life of everyone easier? What will be the correct path forward?
Well, I don't think, I don't think there's any doubt this is where finance is going. This is where it will go. It works so much better. It is more efficient. And I mean, you can go through an entire list of benefits of blockchain and finance on blockchain. But as far as transparency goes, there's some things that are still going to be a fact of the matter and a fact of life because the ether is great for transactions and such, but you still have the real world assets themselves. And just because you have a token saying that you've got an oil well doesn't mean that you actually have an oil well. So a lot of work is done in the ether, but there's a lot of work that's still done in reality. When we were putting this together, I'm not a tech guy, I'm a finance guy. And for my tech guys, I said, hey, can we create a token? Can we trade and swap that token? They said, yes. I said, great. I'll let you guys handle that part. Where I came into play is, all right, now how do we actually attach value to that? And, just speaking on something simple, if we were buying a piece of real estate in the US, we know exactly how to buy it. We know exactly how to identify ownership. We know
Right.
exactly how to lock that ownership. And we know exactly how to tie it to that token. Now, that's all fine. That's all perfected. However, you still need that third party in there saying, yeah, Sam actually tied the asset to the token. So in our construct in particular, we use an international accounting firm, and we have them come in and do third-party audits. They're third party. They don't have a vested interest or anything else. They're paid to verify the assets. So that's where you see a lot of the lift because I don't doubt there are gentlemen that are 30 years younger than me who know more about tokenization than I do. But those same gents who are 30 years younger don't know what I know about the actual real world asset and how we tie it to that token.
Yeah, yeah. And that's in the end, it's one combination with the other because you cannot do one without the other, and vice versa. So in the end, it's all it matters is just the combination and the experience and the knowledge how to contract and put it all together. Right. So
Yeah, yeah, that's spot on. Because we recognize that we're trying to bridge a gap, and I've mentioned it to a few other folks that if you take a look at our team, our oldest individual is about 67 years old. Our youngest is about 22,
right,
which makes for an interesting dynamic because we're speaking two different languages, but it is absolutely necessary because we've got the old world, we've got the new world, and
yeah,
we're trying to bridge that gap. And the explanation I just dropped is, okay, well, how do we actually attach real assets to a token itself? We can create a token and we can say what it represents, but how do we create the actual representation? How do we actually collateralize that token with the assets? So it is a combination, and we are bridging two worlds here, and it's a really interesting point in time.
you actually done a percentage. For example, if I got 5% of an oil well, so I'll get a token with that representation of 5%. That's what you actually manage to.
Yes, all the tokens we create are collaterally backed. They're all backed. They're
Yeah,
all audited and verified. In fact, one of the projects we're working on right now is actually a sports team. We're taking 20% of the sports team. We're going to tokenize that. It's going to have a few rewards features and such, but you're going to be able to verify that, okay, well, I own my 36 tokens and I've got this percentage ownership of this team.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it might be a whole, it might be a part, it might be a direct participation, it might be a derivative. It could be any number of items because the entire world can be tokenized at this point.
Amazing, great work. Congratulations to you and your team on this. It's really great work because you achieved something that was out of out of vision, let's just say. And I think that was needed because this way you can also control assets. Right? You have an asset, you have a percentage of the asset, so you attach that percentage of the asset to the token, and you have
Mhm.
it secured as, I can say, a bond for people who don't understand
Right.
exactly what we're talking about. It's like you buy a bond, and that bond corresponds to a certain percentage of the actual 100% of whatever it belongs to. So amazing work.
I
Amazing work.
appreciate it. I appreciate it.
So, what will be your next steps forward in your strategy?
Well, I think the next steps as of today are to get through the holiday season because everyone seems to be thinking about turkeys and Christmas gifts.
Right,
so
right,
so progress slows a little bit, but uh, like I said, we're going to open a few more markets. We do have a pretty fantastic inventory of assets right now, and just yesterday and the end of last week, what we're working on was how we actually present these items to the public so
right.
they can get a full understanding, get a full scope of what the actual asset is, how they participate, and actually looking to develop some additional relationships with some of the markets to introduce additional liquidity. But really, we've kind of proven it. We understand what we've got. So it's just a matter of taking the next couple steps. But I think ultimately introducing the next few product lines are going to be what you see here in the next 30 days.
Amazing, amazing. So, for people who actually wanted to reach you, how they can reach you or contact you or your organization?
Well, uh, they go to PINX Global Markets. They can send an inquiry. Just saying, I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn as well. And look for the guy in the fantastic pink suit. Because I've gotten I've gotten some positive and some negative response on that.
Yeah,
But we've seen some inquiries come in both from the corporate side and just from supporters of the idea of opening the market to the people and access and such. But there are a few ways to reach us. We're on X, Twitter, Instagram. I believe we have a YouTube channel. We do have some direct line course or uh,
wonderful.
direct access, but reach out, be it a corporation that's interested in maybe tokenizing a project or a company, or even just, hey, we support this, or even if someone wants to tie in a wallet, play around a little bit and see how it works and see if they
Yeah,
can't trade an oil well for a few shares of stock.
yeah, yeah. So, I have a question. Why pinks? I mean, why the name and the color?
So I mentioned earlier in the conversation OTC markets, right? Well, the back in the day, about the lowest level of trading market was the pink sheets.
Yeah,
And I've spent some time in the pink sheets and
I,
done some work
I,
with.
I was just trying to get an acquaintance of if it was that or was some other reason. No, I know exactly where you're going at.
No, it was, in my opinion, just the brilliance of the OTC markets and the remote
Right,
access. So,
right, right.
we're taking it to the next level.
Amazing, amazing. So you actually work with pink sheets. I mean, I had some knowledge back in the days also, but it's quite, it's quite a change and very interesting. You know, that swap from that to this.
Well, I got a little bit of blowback on it a couple of times, like, well, are we really correlating to what we want to be? And
Yeah,
I said, well, I got to be honest. I like the branding. I like the color. I think it's simple. I think it's very direct. And for some of the older guys like you and I, we might appreciate the history of pink sheets and understand its relevance to what we're doing.
yeah, yeah. I think it's a matter of point and Matisse of empathize how did this all started. People in the end, most people forget, especially when we talk about morality and education and honesty and trust, etc. It's something that is supposed to go from generation to generation. I think some of us in current society tend to lose this, um, upcoming. information from generation to generation the way it's supposed to be done. Well, it's
Hmm.
not. And I think that it's important for people to understand where did something start. Um, why is it like this? And why it should be like this? It's the same way as in people in these days supposed to have higher respect for older people. We tend to see that in current society, people trying to lose that. You shouldn't lose
Hmm.
that. It's a matter of respect, right? So, I mean, you and I have been in the military, so I think it's kind of easy to explain between us, but for people who haven't been, I think it may be a bit harder to understand. But I think it's something that those routines are necessary, and it shouldn't be loose with time. It should always be there. I think it's something that it has to become natural. I think, and today I've been seeing, for last year that most of it's been lost. I mean, there's no hierarchy, there's no relation to other people or the actual emphasis of where things start from, where it comes the history. I mean, I even saw in some countries where I've been that people don't even know their own story. I mean,
Hmm.
you not to know your own story of your own country, where you were born, and this is happening. Not in just one country. I'm talking
Yeah.
about general. In general, this is happening.
You know, it's you can learn a lot from a book, but you can learn a lot more if you speak to somebody who lived it, because they're gonna be able to share insight that you won't get from the written word. And unfortunately, just in my opinion, because we're in this age of information where you've got the entire world at your fingertips, you know, we've kind of our level of patience has diminished. We
Yeah,
want information now. We want it now. And that's not a good thing, but even worse is the misinformation that's out there. So if you have impatient people who want information right now, and the first three selections on Google search come
yeah,
back with misinformation, I mean you end up with a lot of people who are impatient, who aren't speaking to the elders, who are not picking up firsthand knowledge, and
yeah.
who are taking misinformation out into the world. So I mean we've
And
got
then
some
on
issues
top
here,
of
and
that,
transparency is needed.
exactly. And then on top of that, they complain that something happened. Well, did you analyze the information? Did you check it was parallel? Did you check it
Hmm.
was true? Because even news we've been seeing today. I mean, I always advise everyone make sure it's in more than one source, not in
Right.
just one
Yes.
place. And this is very fundamental. And people lose the side of point. They just want something. They have this on their mind, and this is what they want. And when they initially see it, they go straight at it. They go straight at it, but without verifying that is this actually true? Is what the information is there is actually viable? Does it have
Hmm.
feasibility? They don't do that, and then of course things happen. And this
I
is the main advantage of people. They are on the market making other people losing time. That's how we say. Not to say the word of these people, but unfortunately, this is how the market feels like.
I think again, just my humble opinion,
Yeah, sure.
but I think that people, because of this diminished level of patience, are seeking information over understanding.
Yeah,
And information is a lot easier than understanding. Understanding takes time. Understanding takes study. It takes research. And if you don't have patience, you're not going to do those things. So you can easily be fed just information
yeah,
and you can say controlled.
exactly, exactly. So, Sam, amazing. We've been already 50 minutes talking. It's been an amazing conversation. So, just for before finalize, what you be, let's just say, your statement of today regarding how people should approach your differentiality to what they know from and usually that society knows from before.
It's difficult to summarize because it's a massive movement.
Yeah.
But we do have some good educational materials on our website, and I'd encourage people to go check us out. We're at pinxglobal.com and peruse and read and understand what we're doing. But the cornerstone is, connecting the world and putting control of one's assets in that person's hands.
Yeah.
Not in the hands of another, not controlled by another, not accessible by another. The ability to participate in markets that were otherwise restricted, and the ability to participate in projects or companies that may have been previously unattainable. The opportunity for people to trade their assets, to hold their own assets, to manage their assets, to pass their assets, to trade their assets, actually
Right.
control in the hands of people more than control in the hands of any and everybody else. So I'd encourage people just to visit the website and educate themselves a little bit and revisit the website a few times because we have additional product lines that are coming out, additional opportunities. There's going to be some
Right.
pretty compelling things that I know nobody else is touching yet.
Amazing. Thank you for that. So, as just last point, what will be, your advice as an expert in markets, to fellow people that are in your area, in your sector, and working on, and you're just beginning? What would you be your major advice to all of them?
Major advice. You know, I think a lot of the advice I'd share is a lot of the conversation we just had. It's just being aware of the environment, being aware of the market, being aware of political movements and such.
Yeah.
We're in a pretty volatile time, and while I've been a creature of the market, and played around with a lot with public companies and public stocks and trading and such, that's kind of where I go to work. But when I consider my personal life, my personal assets, I really don't hold a whole lot of my personal assets in public stock, for example. What I
Right.
hold it in is more hard assets because I actually have control of them. Whereas if they're in a, say, like a brokerage account, if they're not independently held by you where you have the keys to that account, then somebody else has control. So I think in these volatile times, you really need to be aware of the control of your own assets. If you control your own assets, you can begin to control your own destiny.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. So before we go, Sam, what will be your power message of today? I mean, I always ask my guests to say a power message before we finish. So, what will be your power message today?
Message today. Well, message today is let's wrap up a fantastic year. Let's look forward to a next year. And in all honesty, keep your nose to the grindstone, keep your eyes open, your ears in tune, and pay attention because there are a lot of moving parts. And begin to educate yourself because this is the beginning of a massive, massive change in the global financial markets.
Amazing, amazing. Sam, thank you so much for this conversation today. It was very insightful. I'm pretty sure many people will like it. And thank you for joining us, and thank you for your time.
Now, Julio, I appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, catch you guys all later on the next episode. Thank you all. Bye bye for now.